I want to welcome all of you to I think we're now the 8th Sustainability Conference that The Economist has organized, and we're very proud and privileged to have it under the patronage of the President of the Hellenic Republic, Katerina Sakellaropoulou, and I have the honor, the duty, privilege, burden of being the chair this day and tomorrow, along with a much more distinguished co-chair, which is Andreas Papandreou. He, of course, will do all the really sensible stuff. I will be, I think, probably more on the light relief end of this. But I would like to just give a few words to welcome you. I mean, how do we define sustainability? Well, if it's the ability to retain the living standards of the rich world and to raise those of the developing world, so-called global south, then I think actually we are in deep trouble. Now I say that because, you know, journalists always like to look at the gloom and doom because it makes for better headlines. But there are 17 Sustainable Development Goals set by the UN, and they were set way back in 2015 with a deadline for achievement of 2030. So in other words, we've got just 6 years to meet the ambition of covering everything from eradicating hunger and extreme poverty to providing clean water and affordable energy. Well, how are we doing so far? Well, every year there is a report card on the SDGs, and I have it here, and it makes somewhat negative reading, I'm afraid. At the halfway mark, the SDGs are basically in peril. Of approximately 140 targets that can be evaluated, half of them show moderate or severe deviations from the desired trajectory. In other words, they're not actually meeting the expectations and the hopes that were set by the UN way back in 2015. Furthermore, more than 30% of the targets have experienced no progress at all, or worse, have actually regressed. Well, to quote UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, a controversial figure these days, although personally I think he's pretty good, biodiversity loss is accelerating. Progress towards gender equality remains disappointing, and conflicts in Ukraine, Gaza, Sudan, and beyond have left an unprecedented 120 million forcibly displaced people worldwide. Well, I mean, Guterres said more or less the same thing last year, so it's a bit disappointing. I hope that this conference is not going to be marked entirely by, by my negativity at the moment. Let's try and find something positive. But the fact is that we do live in a world which is suffering climate change, lots and lots of natural disasters. Well, I mean, there is, I suppose, a question mark over how much the natural disasters, the increased frequency, how much they are connected with climate change. But I would have thought that actually, at root, the evidence is pretty conclusive that there is a cost and a link. And these disasters obviously have the devastating cost to human life, but also they have immense financial consequences. An example, of course, in 2022, extreme weather and climate-related events caused 50 billion euros in economic losses in the EU alone. Looking ahead, if global temperatures rise by just 1.5 degrees Celsius, the global economy could face a staggering $2.4 trillion loss by 2030. Even Elon Musk would feel the pain. Now, if these rather negative trends do persist, then by 2030, after all, it's not very far away now, a staggering 575 million people, half a billion people, will remain trapped in extreme poverty. Estimated 84 million children and young people will still be out of school, and you know, it's all going to be pretty bad. Well, The Economist, as I think you know, concluded at least a year ago that the target of 1.5 as a limit increase in the global temperature is impossible. Already we've hit 1.1 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. So we've sort of passed at least one tipping point. So in other words, it's pretty hard to be optimistic. And if we don't achieve at least part of these goals, we are in, I think, for a real problem. And the question may be not so much solution, but adaptation. Well, perhaps I'm being over gloomy. I mean, next month in Azerbaijan, which, as you know, is a great exporter of fossil fuels, there will be COP29. Well, will COP29 give us any cause for hope, or is it going to be another case of what that young Swedish girl, Greta Thunberg, has famously called blah, blah, by the great and the good? Well, let's hope that this sustainability summit here in Athens steers very clear of blah, blah. Greece already knows from the last year the problems of floods and wildfires that the climate crisis that possibly caused, probably caused, I'll leave it up to you to decide. But it has, I think, brought home to you the real problems and question marks that surround our environment. Well, I've been pretty negative, sorry about that, but we mustn't indulge in despair. The human species is amazingly creative, and I don't just mean someone like Elon Musk. And the challenge now is to provide the imagination and the finance and the technology to get the SDGs back on track. We can't basically afford to lose time, but at the same time, however pessimistic I may have appeared to be, we shouldn't actually lose hope. Hope springs eternal. I'm sure some Greek philosopher 2,000 years ago coined that phrase, and it's true. Hope does spring eternal, so let's keep hold of that. And now, my great pleasure is to ask Andreas to come and address the gathering. Andreas, the floor is yours.